So one of the topics that's really blown up around the country is criminal justice. So we have the Black Lives Matter movement. We have concerns about police, concerns about crime, a return to nationally law and order politics. What are the key elements of your platform on criminal justice?
I think we've made some progress, gained some ground with Metro, the Camden County Police Force. Everybody goes by Metro. Um, we need to hold those gains, but also respect the civil rights of our young people. There's so many stories I can tell you, whatever part of the city I'm in, whether I'm in Parkside or Centerville or Liberty Park or in East Camden, talking to young people or talking to the parents of young people saying, yeah, it's a little safer, but my son or my daughter can't walk from here to the corner store without getting stopped for just walking. So that's a concern of mine because we can't get public safety off the backs of our children, right? Um, but then also looking at how do we build collaborations or a network of engagement that really puts in place true community policing, right? So I always hold up the district council collaborative boards as that model that I would support to rebuild or funnel our community engagement piece through it. Um, it's been working. It's worked. It's a proven model. Um, but then also looking at some kind of civilian review board to oversee or to have a voice from the community when it relates to how the police interacts with the city.
Is that when you talk about stopping young people from being stopped on the street, is that soft power or hard power? Is that working with the chief in a Camden County Police Department, or is there something that can be done legislatively or with a partnering with city council to try to change the way policing happens here?
I think there's the carrot and the stick, right? So my initial approach would be to really talk about the culture and the philosophy of how we police in our city. Right now, we're in a situation where we have a third party vendor providing our security, right? So we really have to work with that vendor to say, look, this is what we expect the customer service to be in our communities. Not every person, I understand with policing and training that you have to be on guard and so on, but not every person is dangerous. And you can still have your safeguards of your personal protection while also being respectful and kind to your customers. Because at the end of the day, the residents of the city of Camden are the customers of the Camden Police Force, the Camden County Metro. So we have to work on that relationship. Now, if we're not finding that progress, and we're not, then we have to look at the contract. Because it's a contract we have. It's not a legislative. There was no law passed. The only thing that was an ordinance to say we're going to, dissolve our police force. But I have yet to see a contract that lays out what that relationship is. So we will get that contract or put a contract in place to govern that relationship. But the other big issue that's out there, the elephant in the room that's out there, is the economics of all this. When the state took over, and from my understanding of these numbers, but they could be wrong, our public safety budget was about $62 million, right? Police force. That was where they were saying, well, we're going to get twice the police for the same price, right? That was what you heard in the newspapers. As these guys unionize, which is appropriate, and as these guys make their way up those steps, the budget's going to continue to grow. And the question has to be, or the concern I have is, are we going to have a succession of governors who are going to be willing to write those checks to ensure that police force stays in place? Because up until now, and we're 4 or 5 years into the Metro, we still do not have any other municipality in Camden County signing on for service. So if the sustainability model for that program was that other municipalities were going to sign on, we've got a ticking time bomb here. And the concern I have is much like other shared services contracts with Audubon Park and Audubon or Collingswood and Woodland, we may find out at some point that Camden County Police can't do the police force anymore. So we have to, from a disadvantage, have to reconstitute our police force in a year. Imagine that, right? Incredible. So that's a bigger concern I have as well, is the sustainability of the model.
So I want to circle back to budget, and we'll talk about that. I think these issues around budget are really important, but there's also the economic issues around the drug trade in the city. And one of the key things that's happening in other cities is cities are looking at decriminalizing or even legalizing marijuana, in part because it drives so much of the activity, in part because of the economic issues where you can capture revenue at the same time as you put fewer black and brown young people in prison. Have you looked at that? Are there ways we can take the burden off of officers to look at smaller level crimes that would both help the budget and potentially help our young people?
Yeah, I mean, a city of Camden's size is hard for a mayor to decriminalize marijuana in the city of Camden. But I am paying attention to states like Colorado and Seattle and Washington, and seeing how the maturity of this industry of legalized recreational, plus both medicinal and recreational, how it's playing out economically, state finance wise, as well as quality of life wise, and seeing how what those impacts are. And if there is a point in time where our governor, wherever he may be or she may be, wants to have that conversation, considering that Camden is one of the largest cities in the state of New Jersey, I would expect to be at the table for that conversation.
So let's pivot a little bit. We're in a crazy time in terms of national politics, and it's one in which the undocumented and immigrants really feel threatened. And cities have stepped up and played a key role in resistance in some ways, and with a couple of different policies. There's policies like municipal ID programs, sanctuary city policies, where cities don't use resources along with federal ICE investigations. Is there a piece of your criminal justice platform that looks directly at this problem and threat to the undocumented?
Yeah. This whole thing about the undocumented immigration and undocumented individuals is very concerning, in the sense that through my time here working at LAEDA and small business owners, I've seen and heard stories firsthand of individuals being preyed upon because of their status. And these individuals fearing going to the police to report a crime, to say I'm a victim of a crime, this guy robbed me, that kind of thing. So that's a big concern for me, in the sense that any individual who's a resident of my city should feel safe to call 911, period. End of question. Immigration status as it relates to traffic stops, whether you're a victim of a crime, what does that have to do with anything? I can walk out on the street and play a role, and would I get profiled because I have maybe a darker complexion? And I challenge them to go ahead and do that, because what my concern is, or what I've seen, is people that do not understand or know their rights get taken advantage of, and there are efforts underway. Faith in New Jersey that's working on explaining and training individuals that have undocumented status on what their rights are and so on. But as far as municipal IDs, I think municipal IDs are not just an undocumented individual's technique or strategy. It's also for returning citizens. Your young men and women returning from incarceration, trying to put their lives back together, cannot get a driver's license if they have outstanding, suspended licenses or anything of that nature. So how are you supposed to rent an apartment? How are you supposed to get a mailbox or get a job if you don't have identification? So I believe in municipal ID. Camden County used to issue IDs back in the 90s, and so I don't know why they went away with it. I used it a lot in my store when we had individuals come with emergency support vouchers from social services, and they showed their ID. I think it's an important thing to put back in place for our residents and our returning citizens.
Are there other elements of your platform that target that second population, the ex-offender population that's trying to make good as they come back to the city?
Yeah, we have to put supports in place. We have to align the different organizations that are working with them. So when I was working with CCOP, we had what we call our welcome centers, where we had young men and young women meet us at a church of some sort And we really oriented them on health insurance, how to get services, how to set themselves up, so as they reintegrate back into the community. We really need that kind of those kind of opportunities, but we also need to align an alignment strategy where we're walking them through stabilization, acquisition of basic skills, acquisition of a technical skill, culinary arts, whatever it might be for them, getting them into a job, and then the aftercare, keeping them in that job. In the state of New Jersey, we passed the ban the box. So our young people need to be prepared to go ahead and get that interview, be successful, get that job, and keep that job. I call it my workforce alignment strategy, where we take the best of stabilization organizations and we put them in what's called a collective impact model, where somebody enters in through one of these agencies and then they go to the next level for stabilization. Because unfortunately, in the city and other nonprofits in other areas, too many nonprofits want to be I would just say, they want to do everything, but not very well, So they do get into mission creep. So if you're really good at stabilization casework, stick to that. Be good at that. Let somebody else do the GED programming and the literacy programming and the life skills development stuff. And if you're really good at that, let somebody else do the culinary arts and the auto mechanic and all the other different skills, entrepreneurship. And if you're really good at job developer and finding jobs and sending, you be good at that. And then if you're good at aftercare, where a lot of our young people get jobs, but they don't keep jobs because they run into problems, right? They maybe childcare issues, transportation issues. Maybe they don't get along with their supervisor or their work. So we need to have people working with them to ensure that they can keep that job for 90 days. The thing is, they say it takes 28 days to make or break a habit. So we can keep them in a job for 90 days, 28 days, 90 days. We can start to solidify that.
All right.